Hello and welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian. This is Dean Jones, the Well Seasoned Librarian, and we are in Season 4, Episode 2. Really happy to have you here with me to talk to my guest, Cal Peternell, who is the long-term head chef for Chez Panisse. He's a author of multiple books, not the least of which is his newest book, Burnt Toast and Other Disasters. I had a great time talking to Cal, and I can't wait to share this interview with you. It's so good to be into Season 4. We've had so many wonderful guests, and Cal is not the least of them. I really love getting a chance to talk to him. He's so friendly and genial and such a wealth of knowledge on cooking. So here we go to the interview. Onward to talk to our guest, Cal Peternell, author of Burnt Toast and Other Disasters. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today I'm honored to have Cal Peternell on our podcast, who is the author of the recent Burnt Toast and Other Disasters, and also the host of the wonderful podcast, Cooking by Ear. Cal, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Dean.
Now, for our audience members who are not familiar with you, can you just discuss your background and the books you've written?
Sure. So I live in Berkeley now, but I grew up in New Jersey and went to art school in Boston and New York, and where I met my wife, my now wife. And I cooked at home when I was in school, and I worked in restaurants, but I was always as a waiter or like a bartender. And then my wife and I got the opportunity to move to Italy in the late 80s, and we lived there for about 2 years. And that's when I sort of really started to pay attention to food and become just more enchanted with the idea of food and the way it fits into culture. And so when we moved back, I started looking around for restaurant jobs and got hired by a place in San Francisco that's actually still there. It's called Bix.
Oh, yeah.
You know that place?
Yeah, I walked by it a lot.
Yeah, it's a cool supper club down a little alley. And I cooked there. I cooked at a couple of restaurants in Boston. I came back and worked at Loretta Keller's restaurant Bizou, that's now gone, but that was south of Market. And then I got a job at Chez Panisse in Berkeley, Alice Waters' legendary restaurant. And I was there for, I worked my way up, and I was the chef in the cafe, and then I was the chef in the downstairs restaurant. And I was there for a total of, almost 22 years. So I really I grew up in a way, and my family, my wife and I have 3 kids, and they were all part of going to the restaurant a lot, and some of them cooked there. Other ones of them did their homework in the dining room before the customers came in. So we were really a part of that place in an amazing way, in a beautiful way. And then near the end of my time there, our oldest kid, Hop, was leaving home to go to college, and Hop said, can we cook this summer before I go so that I can learn some of our basic, family, not restaurant stuff, but family stuff. Right. And that was the beginning of my first book, 12 Recipes, which I could tell you more about that story if you want. And then I wrote, the second book was a recipe for cooking, and then Almonds, Anchovies, and Pancetta. And now my new book is Burnt Toast and Other Disasters.
I do want to talk to you about your books, in fact, all your books, because I've been reading them this week, and I really have gotten very attached to them. One thing I want to ask you about is, if you want to talk a little bit about your time at Chez Panisse, what that was like. That must have been amazing for you.
Yeah, it was, it's everything that I was very impressed, and just when I read Alice's first cookbook, I felt, this was before I worked there, I felt like she was, I really subscribed to her way of thinking about the cooking starts at the market or the farm and the seasonal and all that, I just was suddenly like, yes, this is the way I think about food too. And then working there, I was not disappointed. It's full of the best ingredients, so many amazing connections to local farmers that I still have friendships and relationships with farmers that I was just up at Full Belly Farm last weekend cooking with them, and so wonderful to see all those farmers. And I've known them for decades. And then the staffing there is just full. It's a restaurant full of people who are really passionate about food, and that's not always true in restaurant kitchens. There's people that are there for different kinds of reasons, but at Chez Panisse, it seems like Alice is able to gather together these passionate individuals, and it's a good environment. It's a sort of non-toxic cooking environment, due no doubt in no small part to the fact that it's led by a woman, and there's a lot of women in leadership roles there, and I think that is a good thing for workplaces in general.
Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned your kids asking you to do more family type meals. Are you teaching your kids to cook? How old are your kids?
Yeah, so the oldest Hop will be 30 in a couple of months, and then Milo is 26, and Liam is 17. And so that first book, 12 Recipes, I started writing, like I said, when Hop was getting ready to leave home, and I kind of wanted to give them like a little primer of some recipes and I thought, well, 12 recipes of things that you can kind of mix and match to make meals. And that turned into a book that I figured everybody would want, that kind of a little primer. And so, yeah, I've taught them through that. Hop and I cooked together a lot. We've cooked at Chez Panisse together, at many events over the years together. And during some of the pandemic time, they were staying here with us, and we had like a little pop-up that we did at first to make a little money, and then we sort of converted it into a fundraising thing that we would do for causes that we believed in. Milo is also a really good cook and sort of self-taught. It tends towards the how to make a hot dog like the most fabulous thing it can be. And Liam is beginning to find his way in the kitchen as well. Liam, by the way, is the photographer for this latest book. So he took all those photos last summer when he couldn't get the usual kind of summer jobs that he would get because, it was a pandemic. So
right.
I said, well, I have a job for you, because I already knew he was a good photographer. So yeah, he did a great job on this book.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the food photography is really great, and it's not something that everybody can do. So this is like, it's a great gift because it's something that's very needed right now, and did a fantastic job.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, your books, A Recipe for Cooking and 12 Recipes, the one thing that really struck me about them was the informal style, and your writing voice is wonderful in them. It really puts the reader at ease. I know myself, I have a lot of trepidation about tackling some recipes that might be what I would consider outside of my reach, but you kind of really put the reader at ease, and you make it feel like it's something we can do. Was that your intent in the writing of them?
Yeah, for the first book, that because of the concept of the book, it kind of had this built-in voice, or at least I tried to stick to this voice, which was a father telling his kid how to cook for themselves with what they've got, So whether, at the time, Hop was living in a place in Brooklyn that had a like little galley kitchen, and I knew that there weren't really like great like produce markets and great stores around him. It was basically like corner shops, and so I just wanted the tone to be like, no matter what, you can make something great. And like, yeah, maybe you need to try and find some better ingredients going forward, but tonight you've got what you've got and you can make it great, and here's how you can do it. And so I just kind of tried to always remind myself that that's who I was writing to, is that person who wants to cook for themselves, doesn't have, the most perfect produce, maybe direct from the farm, doesn't have like the finest cookware. And also I really left Chez Panisse out of that first book, because I didn't want people to think, oh yeah, well, this guy's a chef at Chez Panisse and he's living in this, amazing Bay Area food bubble. Sure, he can do it. So I tried to leave that out, and to lower the intimidation factor, because I think a lot of people do feel some intimidation when they go into the kitchen. And then in the second book, I kind of brought Chez Panisse more into it, because it's a book. The first book is not how to make a dinner party; it's how to like make dinner for yourself or your family or your friends. The second book was more, if you are having a dinner party, or if you like me, and probably like you, like the idea of like spending the entire Saturday afternoon in the kitchen because you want to have like a multi-course kind of fancy dinner that night, and that equals like a pleasurable day for you. Well, this is the book for you to do that with. Having said that, you can also leave, there's like lots of little grace notes in there, which you can leave out. And there's some basic recipes that'll be good for your weeknight meal as well.
Now, one of the things I loved about, and I apologize if I'm gushing too much, but I'm really enjoying your work, so please forgive me for that. But like Almonds, Anchovies, and Pancetta, one of the really cool things about it that I loved was it wasn't just this cookbook. There's a lot of you in there and a lot of your narrative in there. And I loved all the bits about you and your stories, and you're talking about, meeting people and just cooking for people in there. And I just really loved that. And I really enjoyed your narrative voice in that. So did you aim for that, or did it just kind of fall together when you started writing it?
Yeah, I did aim for that. And I think that especially that book, by the time I got to that third book, I was just looking at like, what did I love about cookbook writing? And, I love all the things I just talked about, like imparting kitchen wisdom on people and encouraging them to cook and convincing them that they can cook and that what they make is going to be delicious and probably cheaper and better than what they could get out. But I also love writing the little narrative pieces in the introductions to the chapters and to the recipes. And I kind of thought, like, for this book, I'm going to let myself go a little on that. And food for me is a real, mnemonic device that helps me to just bring up all kinds of memories, sometimes that I didn't even really know I had, or that they're just kind of buried there at the back of the shelf, so to speak. And so, I let myself go a little bit with that. And I love that kind of storytelling, and whether it's kind of like funny or maybe a little sad or just sort of honesty. And I feel like it's a way that is, I've found food and cooking to be a common language, for a lot of people, and it sets people sort of at ease and allows for that, because it's also sensual. It can sort of bring up memories of, like, that chocolate cake that my auntie used to make for us, and I remember that time we went and had it, or and so I kind of felt like I'm going to chase down all of those little memories and tell those stories.
Because if you looked at, like, if you took out all the narrative of the recipes, they're wonderful recipes, but the narrative that you put in there really made the idea of what you were cooking come alive. And I really urge anybody who's listening to this to get, all your books, of course, but Almonds, Anchovies, and Pancetta is such a fun, enjoyable read for people that like cookbooks. They're going to really love this one. I really recommend that.
I also felt like, one more thing about that is that I read a lot of cookbooks, and after a while, I get kind of tired of reading, or I guess more to the point is, I was tired of writing introductions that say, a squeeze of lemon really brings zing to this little thing, or what,
Yeah.
that I just felt like, well, if there's going to be an introduction, maybe it should be something better, like something more interesting, or like a personal story. And that's what I want to read. And so that's what I started to write.
Yeah. I mean, I got the feeling that you're a lover of cookbooks, and I really think that comes through. Now, with Burnt Toast and Other Disasters, a book of heroic hacks, fabulous fixes, and secret sauces, how did this book come about for you? It seems to be a little bit of a different departure. So it seems to be directly kind of an instructional for people that are kind of new to cooking or beginning cooks.
Yeah, this book is a departure for me, and in that way, it was had an extra little fun challenge of writing it, because some of the stuff, the other books, I kind of wrote down what I do. Like, I just basically was writing down what I already just do all the time, which is cook that way with good ingredients and good olive oil, and bringing my like skills and sensibility to it. And this one, I thought, what if I brought my skills and sensibility to other kinds of ingredients or other kinds of dishes? And it really came about during travel, like when I was traveling on vacation, or more specifically when I went to visit my parents. And I love to cook for them while I'm there, and they would say, what are you going to make for us tonight? And I would say, well, the way I like to cook, in my possibly somewhat snotty way of, go to the market and see what's looking great. And honestly, there wasn't that stuff that looked that great at the markets there, and or at least I wasn't finding the right markets. And so I started to think, like, well, what do you do when you don't have those things, and when maybe you don't have that delicious olive oil, which I rely so heavily on? Like, what can you do with butter or just neutral oils? What can you do when you've made a mistake, and maybe the mistake is you burnt the toast, or you overcooked the meat, or you boiled the rice until it's kind of mushy, or maybe the mistake was like you got broccoli again, even though you've had broccoli every night and you're kind of tired of broccoli. Or maybe you bought really beautiful vegetables, but that was like last week and now they're not so beautiful. Or maybe you're just in a big hurry, and the only thing that you can make is instant mac and cheese, but it just has to be better than the last few times you've had. Like, what can you do to make it better? And so that's how I set about this book. And some of it was kind of an interesting discovery for me. There's one dish that was really a revelation, which is a dish where you cook rice and with a can of beans and a bunch of cilantro and scallions, but the rice, the rice goes into the pan raw. The can of beans, you just dump it in there. You add some water, you add the scallions, and it is amazingly good, considering that it takes 15 minutes and it's beans out of a can. So I recommend that one.
Now, you have a wonderful sense of humor, a very dry sense of humor in your books, and I really enjoy it. Did you develop that as your kind of writing voice as you went along? Because it seemed I find like I'm kind of identifying your style of writing a little bit as I read your books. Was that something you developed?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always sort of had that dry sense of humor, I'm told. But when I started to write, I was thinking about the writers that I love and why. And when you get to a certain point in your ability to cook, I think if you ask most chefs, they're not necessarily following recipes. So they're not always looking for a recipe, at least for, I think we follow recipes for things that we're baking, for desserts and things like that are a little more formulaic. But so what I would look for is the voice of the writer, and like inspiration, like, oh, this looks like a great dish, I need to make it. And I just like the kind of voices that are a little more funny or entertaining in some way. So like people like, I love Fergus Henderson's book. I don't know if his books are
a big fan.
really funny. I laugh out loud sometimes in those books. Richard Olney, American, who wrote a lot about the food in southern France. Also funny, pretty snarky sometimes. I also love Elizabeth David, and maybe they share a dryness of their sense of humor, but her books are kind of not necessarily funny, but sometimes a little snarky and funny in that way. So, I tried to like follow their amazing examples, standing on the shoulders of giants, to come up with a style that was my own.
You must have an amazing cookbook collection. Am I wrong about that guess?
I do have, I do indeed.
Nice.
I've overrun the shelves and now they're just starting to stack up.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Although I imagine yours is way better than mine. I want to talk to you a little bit about Cooking by Ear. It's an amazing podcast that I love very much. So I've been listening to all of them. How did you come up with the idea? How did this develop for you?
It started when I was with a friend who used to run the Center for Investigative Reporting right over here in Emeryville, and is a guy who's deep into media. And we were at a wedding together, and the wedding ran out of booze before the reception was even over. And so we said, do you want us to go do a beer run? And they said, oh yes, please. So we went out, and while we were out, we were talking about cooking, and my friend said, I can't even cook like lentil soup. I just don't. And I said, I can totally help you with that. And he said, is there like a way we could put an audio piece together that would help people? They could listen, and somehow it would teach them to cook. And we started talking about it, and we started bringing more people in, and we luckily found this amazing producer and audio expert whose name is Christina Loring, and she ended up being the co-creator of the podcast. And we came up with this idea that we needed a surrogate we needed someone to stand in for the listening audience who wasn't a chef, so that they could keep me in line if I got too chefy. And we thought, let's do it where you're cooking along in real time, and we have a guest. And so that guest is asking, real life questions of me. And if I simplify things too much, they can say, wait, go back and tell me how to do that. And that guest can also provide interest, because, there's moments when the onions are cooking away, or you're waiting for the water to boil, where cooking is, you're not actually doing anything. It's passive cooking time. And we thought, we can make that like really interesting if we get the right guests. And back to that thing about, the way food allows people to tell their stories, that maybe they'll open up a little in the kitchen. And if we can go to their kitchen, even better, because then there's more stuff to talk about.
Which you did with Frances McDormand.
We were very lucky to get Frances. Frances was already a fan, and
wonderful.
He would go to Chez Panisse, and we kind of became friends. And I was like, do you want, I don't know if you're into this, but I could come and teach you to cook something, and you could pick what it is. And she said, sure. She's very private, so she didn't want us to talk about where she was, but we went out there, and getting into her kitchen, and just like, there's something that when you're standing around, I feel like if I had just called her and said, hey, can I come interview you? She would have just said no, because, she's had enough interviews and she doesn't need that. But can I could teach you to cook something? I'll bring all the groceries. I'll do the cleanup. We'll eat it. The whole thing takes like 2 to 3 hours. You don't even have to change out of your sweat clothes, because it's audio. And she said yes, and that was actually our first episode that we recorded, and was so much fun. As you might imagine, she's just like fun as could be. And then, we took it from there, and we were lucky to have a whole line of like amazing other guests.
It's so groundbreaking, because there's a lot of podcasts like mine that are basically interviews, usually fairly scripted, where you're just talking and having a question and answer session. But this was very improvisational. So it's so much better than an interview in many ways because you're just kind of like talking like humans do. There's one other podcast that I'm reminded of, Out to Lunch with Jay Rayner. It's a British podcast where he just sits and has lunch with people, and it's not scripted. He just kind of just talks and they have a conversation. So it's so wonderful. It's better because like you were getting all these fun, quirky bits from your guests that you wouldn't have gotten with an interview that were just delicious.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a big Frida taught me how to twerk, or she tried to teach me how to twerk. Apparently, I'm not nearly flexible or able to get enough or able to get low enough. I was teaching Mira Nair how to make fattoush, this sort of Middle Eastern bread salad. But she also she showed up with a broken leg because she had literally broken a leg in the theater. She fell off the stage when they were doing Monsoon Wedding at the Berkeley Rep. It was wet and she fell. And so, we had that. She taught me how to make the chai that she drinks all the time. Things like, this amazing poet, Tommy Pico, revealed that he had never cracked an egg before. So I literally got to show him how to like crack his first egg. I remember that I was a little nervous when we went to Frances McDormand's house, but as soon as she pulled out this plate that said motherfucker on it, everyone sort of relaxed after that.
That's wonderful.
Bob the drag queen was amazing and challenged me to eat whole cloves of garlic with him while we were shooting almonds out of their skins across the apartment. I got sort of drunk with Alexander Payne because he busted out this bottle of wine that was from Sideways, and then we had a couple of other bottles of wine. So yeah, I would love to keep doing it. As you probably know, it's a little hard to figure out how to monetize a podcast.
Right.
And we did have some costs. It was tricky to produce because we would go to someone's house or they would come to my house in their kitchen, and we'd have like 3 hours of raw footage, and then Christina was a genius at putting together editing it so that it was still interesting. We got all the golden moments, but it was actually timed right so that you could cook along with us in real time and have, of course you could push pause if you needed to, but so that took some doing and ended up, we were able to find one wonderful angel sponsor, but we eventually kind of ran out of money. But I have a dream that we can somehow bring it back someday.
Oh, I mean, it was such I always recommend it to people because it's just, I think, one of the best podcasts available. It's just, if you get to do more, I would love to see it, but I can appreciate how hard it is to do. It's way more difficult to do something like this live than people realize, I think.
Yeah. And, we would have to go recook everything later just to get the timing right and to get some other, like maybe if we didn't get some certain sounds. But like I said, again, Christina Loring was indispensable and an amazing part of that project.
So I want to ask you, I'm going to circle back to the cookbook authors we were talking about. Who are some of the cookbook authors or food writers you like to read right now that you're enjoying?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and there's lots of books coming out right now, but I was just looking at my shelf this morning because I was looking for another book, and I was just thinking about the books that I need to pull back out again and sort of dip back into. But I don't know if you know, Anissa Halou has an amazing book called Feast that's all Middle Eastern amazing stuff that's, I kind of try to go outside my my Euro bubble when I go into cookbooks. So Anissa Halou's book Feast is amazing. A good friend Tamar Adler, who wrote for the Times for a while and is working on a new book, but I love her book that's somewhat overlooked, Something Old, Something New, where she took all these old recipes, mostly old American recipes, and kind of either tested them and said they're good as they are or updated them. things like oysters Rockefeller and aspic and those kind of like old celery consommes, and
Yeah.
just kind of like these sort of dishes that have gone out of favor but that still are good. So Tamar's book is great. I love this local book by Anya Koo and Elazar Sontag called Flavors of Oakland. Elazar now writes for Eater, and I'm not sure what Anya's doing, but they put this beautiful book together where they go into the homes of families in Oakland and learn a recipe from them and kind of profile the family and their culture. And they're mostly like, immigrants, families from all over the world. And that one's great and has great pictures. I don't know if you know the local kitchen incubator, La Cocina.
Yes. Yeah.
But their book, We Are La Cocina, is a wonderful book that was put together by multiple authors. I'm sure you know the amazing, legendary, inimitable Paula Wolfert.
Oh yeah.
Local author. I think she lives up in Sonoma, and Paula suffers with Alzheimer's disease, and partway through her that illness coming on and her sort of loss of memory, she wrote with a co-author a book called Unforgettable, which is a beautiful book telling that story and has lots of great recipes in it. Paul Wolfert, I think foodies and like chefs know her, but a lot of people in the general public have somehow overlooked Paula, so I would recommend her. I love Edna Lewis and Scott Peacock's book, The Gift of Southern Cooking. Edna Lewis is a legendary Southern American cook and writer, and in this book she teamed up with Scott Peacock, who was her longtime companion, and their book is amazing. And then I'll just tell you one more. A friend, Lebanese cook Barbara Abdeni Masad. So Barbara Masad's books, they all start with M. Moune, Metze, and Manaouche. It's all Lebanese cooking. Manaouche are those flatbreads that you can get locally at Reams. I don't know if you know Reams, California, but
Oh yeah. Yeah.
she makes those with all kinds of toppings. And Metze, of course, and then Moune is like a book of preserving Lebanese style preserving of everything, vegetables, fruits.
That sounds amazing.
Amazing book, really deep. Kind of reminds me of Paula Wolfert's books because it goes deep and is well researched. And so yeah, those are the ones that I'm kind of dipping into these days.
Now that it's getting to be fall here, although California, we have our own ambiguous seasons.
Yeah.
What are you looking to cook this fall? Anything specific?
We can all still even though it's mid-October in the Bay Area, we can still take pleasure in eating some of the end of the seasons of like tomatoes and peppers, and there's still eggplant and those kinds of things. And then we're transitioning now into like some of my favorite things, the sort of all the bitter vegetables that come in the summer, in the winter, especially bitter greens, like all the chicories, the various types of radicchio, Castelfranco and Chioggia radicchio. I love delicata squash and all the sweet like roasting squashes, the winter squashes. But delicata is a real treat. That one that has like you can kind of just roughly peel the skin. I usually just leave some of the skin on there because for one thing, it's kind of impossible to peel because of the way it's shaped. But and then I love to fry those, like slice them into, scoop out the seeds, slice them and dip them into a batter and deep fry them. They're really good, like a tempura batter, or and then all the different. Well, I love Brussels sprouts like everybody does. So Brussels sprouts with ginger or a little bit of bacon or pancetta is something I love in the winter. And then the beautiful and sort of psychedelic cauliflower Romanesco that has those little fractal peaks.
Yeah.
That are always fun. And then later in the winter, there'll be things like, artichokes and cardoons that I always look forward to. Anything that can go with anchovies is a favorite of mine.
Oh yeah, anchovies are wonderful and so underrated in America. I think, hopefully, I think your cookbook is going to help promote them more because they really are wonderful.
Yeah, and a sustainable catch, and also, you don't need like a whole pie, a whole steak of. It's like it's not like like a tuna steak or a swordfish steak or something. It's just like a little bit of fish that goes a long way flavor wise and works really well with all kinds of vegetables, especially in the winter.
Oh, and this such a beautiful, I just love them and everything. They're just so good. One last question. I hope this is a fun one. What kind of music do you listen to when you're cooking?
Lately I've been listening to a lot of like 80s new wave.
Nice.
Bands like like Susie and the Banshees and
Nice.
And the Cocteau Twins.
Nice.
Just kind of putting those on, letting that spin out on various websites. I love. I've been listening also lately to covers of. I just got into this covers thing, like where I'm listening to covers of Paul Simon songs, and covers of or Tom Waits covering the Ramones, and kind of like getting into. There's a great Jeff Buckley cover of a Led Zeppelin song, Night Flight, that I can't get out of my head lately.
I love that. No, I like covers too.
Yeah.
Cal, thank you for being on the podcast and answering my questions. I really appreciate you being here with me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Good to talk to you, Dean.
That was my talk with New York Times bestselling author Cal Peternell. He is the author of 12 Recipes, A Recipe for Cooking, and Almonds, Anchovies, and Pancetta. We spoke about his newest book, Burnt Toast and Other Disasters, A Guide for Making Things Better. On Monday, I'll be having chef, restaurateur, and television host Joanne Ware. You've seen her on Joanne Ware's Cooking Confidence, Ware Cooking in the City, Joanne Ware's Cooking Class, Seasons 1 and 2, and Ware Cooking in Wine Country. She is also the authoress of many numerous cookbooks. We're going to be having her on the show on Monday. I had a lovely interview with Joanne, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Until then, happy cooking!